quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the thing. So
yeah,
brother, you've been in the game for a minute, and
98,
again,
man. That's when it started.
So tell me about that. So when you say 98, it started. What was the start exactly?
I mean, if we want to talk about the start, that goes back to like 92, right?
Okay,
So I'm 13
I want to talk about
years
the
old.
start.
Yeah. So, obviously, and anybody that's seen me speak before know I got a big red birthmark, and kids are cruel, and they started making fun of me for that for all through elementary and junior high, and junior high. I'm like, man, screw this. And I asked for a weight set for my birthday, thinking if I got bigger and stronger than everybody else, that they would leave me alone. And that's really what happened. I could still remember the day when somebody was like, they started to push me, and they're like, "Ooh," and I'm like, "Yeah," and that was like the last time they started messing with me. And then that next year, I ended up going to Rocky IV was out on VHS, and or maybe it was on HBO or something. I can't remember. And I watched that, and that really set me in motion. And it wasn't Rocky's train. And everybody's always like, Rocky. And yeah, no, I get it. It's cool. He's the icon. He's the superhero. Mm-hmm. I freaking love Dolph Lundgren's character, man. Ivan Drago, and the way that they were training him, and they were looking at the force of the punch, and they were looking at VO2 and heart rate response and everything like that. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And then my mom, knowing that I liked lifting weights so much, she's got a little flyer that there was a strength and conditioning camp at the local school, Southwest Missouri State. Now it's MSU. And Kirk Woolfolk was the head strength coach then, who he left SMS, went to Notre Dame, and then he went to Navy whenever they were still giving out lifetime contracts after you were vested. And I don't know if he's still there or not. He might have retired. I've not done a good job of staying in touch with him. Actually, any of these three individuals. Russ Ball was the strength coach of the Kansas City Chiefs at that time. He was over helping us. And now he's in the front office with the Green Bay Packers. And then Rob Rogers, who had bounced all over the country. And he was really the guy that made me want to do it. Doing that clinic within that day, that's when I'm like, dude, man, this is what I am doing. This is my calling. I love lifting weights. This is a profession about lifting weights. Let's go. And at that clinic, Rob and brought Russ and Kirk over and talked to a 13-year-old kid. I hadn't turned 14 yet, like a grown-ass man. And they were talking to me about training. They gave me the recommendation of, I probably have the book in here somewhere. I'll be goddamn.
You have it. Oh, come on now.
I think this is the right side. Speed Strength Training for Football by E.J. Doc Crease. This is the one that I had to get to replace the other one.
Yeah.
The other one, the cover fell off. It was a red cover. And it was from, I think he was still at Middle Tennessee State at that point in time. And then they redid the cover photos with Colorado and all that. But, they gave me that book. Now, they didn't give it to me. They recommended it. And I went to the bookstore and ordered it, because bookstores were small back then. And actually, I guess they're probably getting small now other than the Barnes and Noble. And I read everything on it. And then I started reading everything I could get my hands on. And that just progressed. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I started competing in powerlifting a couple of years later. And it went down that rabbit hole, that love of lifting weights and that pursuit of strength. And I ended up doing pretty well in that sport. And then I happened to be sitting at the right place at the right time in 1998. I was actually, it's for horrible reasons. I was skipping one class because I was too hungover to go, and I needed to study for another test. So I'm in front of the little Taco Bell at the stadium to get some bean burritos to coat my stomach and enough Diet Pepsi to keep me going. And one of my buddies who I went to high school with was on the football team. And I had just won, I think it was the national championship or something for, junior nationals, teenage nationals, something like that, something that it seemed super huge at the time. But looking back on it, I'm like, this is like Little League World Series. I thought it was a big deal back then. But, now I'm like, I'm no Dave Hoff. I was never a Dave Hoff, Bill Gillespie type. I was good, but I wasn't the greatest.
Yeah.
And, but, I thought it was all that back then. And he was talking to me, and then Rick Perry, who was the head strength coach there at that time, came up, and Fitz is like, hey, he's a power lifter. He just won a national championship. And he's like, oh, you look big enough. You want a job? And I go, yes, sir, I do. And it's like, I can't pay you anything. That's fine. I saw that fork in the road, and I picked it up, and I went after it. And the rest, as they say, is history. He's the one that had the first library that I really got into with the translated Soviet texts. He encouraged me to read, and he would buy books for me to read. Now, he would keep them, but, if there was something I didn't know and he didn't have that book, and I'd be like, hey, Rick, can you do this? He's like, yeah, sure, but I'm keeping the book. And I learned a tremendous amount from that. And that really, him also realizing that I could be a bit of a dumbass too, and he didn't fire me for being a dumbass. So, I give him all the credit in the world. I would not be Bryan Mann if Rick Perry wasn't Rick Perry. So, and it just went from there. So then within a couple of weeks, I had my own teams. Now people are like, whoa, wait a second. You come off the street and you have your own team in 2 weeks. Realize this is 1998. Strength and conditioning is not the same as it is today. Yeah. That was one dude with 20, I can't remember if we had 21 or 23 sports, over 500 athletes. Damn. So you got somebody that at least knows how to, what a squat's supposed to look like, and a bench is supposed to look like, and a deadlift's supposed to look like. So I had my own teams within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was starting to write my own programs by that next semester with the swim team. And they gave me tennis. That didn't work out too well. But, you know how I
different.
I was just too intense for them. And
right.
I don't, I know I'm not for everybody. I know I'm a different cat, man. The people who love me, and I love them. And the people who don't love me, that's okay. I ain't got a problem with them. I know that I'm a different cat, and a lot of that's my background and childhood. So I approach things differently than some other people would. I'm a lot more protective of things. Whenever you've had everything taken away from you before, you hold on tight to it. Yeah. And so I know that I'm always going to be me. I'm not going to not be myself because of some other societal expectation. So I know that I'm not for everybody. I just got a complaint. Somebody on faculty, I gave a free in service for them, and they wrote a complaint to let me know that I offended them. And okay, great.
Sorry. Yeah.
Don't come to the next one I do.
Right. Right. So you don't like my in service.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Cool. You go your way, I'll go mine. You go be great, I'll go be great. I'm going to be me. And I was too loud and intense and abrasive, I think is what you said. I don't remember anything that was too abrasive. I did, it was my 5th class of the day teaching, and that's a lot. And I couldn't think of some words, and I got frustrated. And I think I said the D word or the S word a couple of times whenever I couldn't remember the word out of frustration. So, I was pretty muted. And like, if that's offending
you, caught you on a good day.
You got me on a good day. Yeah, you would have had a heart attack and stroke if you would have been around me if I was unleashed being me.
Right.
But it's okay. Like I said, I know I'm not for everybody. And then from there, I went out to finish my undergraduate degree to do an internship at Arizona State under Joe Kent, Mark Uyama. And about halfway through that, I knew my dad was in bad health, but he took a pretty rapid decline there for a while. We thought we were going to lose him. So then I ended up coming back, and closest big university to Jay, Oklahoma was the University of Tulsa. I guess to call that a big university was a bit of an overstep, but he allowed me to come in halfway through the summer and finish my internship. And I definitely was not expecting that. I thought I was going to have to pay for another semester of school and go redo everything. But that was whenever I got hooked up with Pat Ivy and Josh Stoner down there. Then I went back to Missouri State for a year. They realized whenever I was gone that summer how much I actually did. And it was a phone call like, please come back. Please come back and work for us. And so then they gave me an assistantship, created a position for me, and stayed there for that year. And then Pat got the job in Missouri, gave me a call. I went there 15 years, got a I got a post-grad certificate. It's not a true master's degree, but sometimes I'll say I've got 2 masters just because I don't want to have to explain what the other thing is. And then and I got my PhD while coaching full time and writing the powerlifting book, which was just asinine. Guys, don't try and do that to yourself. That just because you think you can do something doesn't mean that it's a good idea to do it. And I've learned that lesson way too many times. So I'm having to learn that it's like I got to slow down a little bit now. And then from Missouri, I was there from Pat's, second week there. No, it was like 3 months. His third month there. Mm-hmm. I was with him all the way through the end of the Gary Pinkel era.
Yeah.
And was staying on as faculty until the protest happened. And that's what ended Pat, as well as the president of the university and the chancellor, and funding got cut by the state. They weren't happy with how it was handled. 600 faculty positions were cut. Mine was one of them. Found out the day I got back from paternity leave for Haley's birth, it's like, congratulations, but you're not going to have a job. And then I saw a posting at the University of Miami, applied for that. And then I went there. I was there for 5 years, maybe 6 years. I can't do the math.
Yeah.
And then I ended up working with some of their sport teams, and ended up, whenever Aaron Feld came in, he brought me in as the director of sports science for Olympic sports. And while I was program director for XFIZ, that's another thing that didn't last long. I knew that I couldn't serve both of those masters. I would do either one really well and one really crappy, or both just somewhat mid. And I don't like, I can't, it would cause more of my hair to fall out than already has. And then I happened to come do a talk at Texas A&M, and made an offhanded comment that, hey, man, this is a great spot. I got a lot of family in the area. I haven't had any family near me in 5 years. Like, hey, we can make this permanent. You don't have to just come here and give this lecture. I thought they were talking smack, and they were serious. So here I am, year 2 at Texas A&M, and I'm loving life. Things were great at the University of Miami. Things were great at the University of Missouri. But, dude, this one, the faculty here feels like home.
Dude, I know this is probably going to be like it's not going to be a loaded question, but because I'm sure there's a ton in between, but I hope that you kind of get where I'm going to go. I'm talking 30 plus years ago, you're starting to lift, you're going the powerlifting route.
Mm-hmm.
How much of your philosophy, approach, thoughts about training have changed from like what I would call like those fundamentals of powerlifting?
Yeah. So every time I get the chance to talk about this, I do, I had a tremendous cognitive bias towards strength. That strength was everything, because I liked strength. I was a power lifter. Squat, bench, and deadlift were the most important things. So that's what I really took to all of my programming. And honestly, it wasn't until I became a professor, and specifically whenever I got to Miami, where my views really started to change. I've presented on this before, and I need to figure out a way to turn this into some sort of manuscript. But we did a force velocity profile, load velocity profile, technically, on, but I mean, really, they're the same thing. You multiply the load times the acceleration of gravity. If you got kilograms, that's newtons.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really the same thing, but it's just if you include gravity or not. That's the only difference between those two.
Mm-hmm.
But load, velocity, and power, and looking at the location where power occurred and looking at the load and force velocity characteristics. Well, whenever we looked at the force end of the spectrum on this baseball team, there's no difference between anybody, man. Like if you are an All-American and you are somebody who rides the bench, not much of a difference, right? I mean, there might be like a 5-7%, but in the grand scheme of things, who cares? And that gets me in trouble with other researchers because, I just, if it's minutia, I don't care. Let's get to the meat of it. Let's get to where the 80% of the results are going to come from, and let's call it good. I don't want to precision the heck out of it because that makes it unusable to most practitioners. But I get lambasted for that, dog. But man, what was I talking about? My freaking ADHD kicking in.
Low velocity strength.
Oh, yeah. So then I look at the velocity end of the spectrum. I'm like, well, there's 4 outliers here. I probably had to delete that. So we got a normal data set and everything. And then I looked at who those 4 were. 2 All-Americans, all conference that probably could have been an All-American in a different year, and newcomer of the year, right? The guy to watch. And those 4 guys differed at the velocity end of the spectrum. And then it made me think, well, let's think about the demands of baseball, right? What sort of external loads do they have to overcome in that sport? Well, some would say the catcher. I mean, that's mostly an internal load. Yeah, they got the stuff on them. I understand they're coming from a dead stop in the bottom of the squat, so popping up. Yeah, strength is going to be important there, but they're really overcoming their own body mass, Yeah. Then how much does a ball weigh? Not much. It's 5 ounces, I think.
Yeah.
I usually have to ask Eric McMahon every time I'm going to say that. I'm like, hey, Eric, how much does this weigh again? Because I don't know. I don't remember. You're the baseball dude. And then a bat's like 32 ounces, 2 pounds. I mean, we're talking about minimal external loads to overcome.
Yeah.
It's not like this is football or wrestling where you're having to dominate an opponent physically, or even in basketball, a center who's got to post up and push the other guy away. They're having to go against external loads, heavy external loads. In baseball, it's light. So then it made sense that all the deviations between the great players and the average players didn't happen at the force end of the spectrum. They happened at the velocity end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that is really what I was like, oh, crud.
Yeah.
I felt, man, I still remember that day. I was like nauseous for 2 or 3 weeks because I'm like, how many athletes have I just known I was doing the right thing? And I'm pretty sure I screwed them up. And just, swallowing that pill was, it was bitter, dog. Part of me wanted to be like, let's just forget that this ever happened and go on with what you've been doing, because that is, that's more comfortable. Yeah. I'm like, nah, man, I think that we're wrong on some of these things. Now, strength may be king, but not all sports are a monarchy. I stole that from a guy that was interviewing with us on our PhD. And then, I mean, you look at the UK, right? Even though that they've got a monarchy, and you look at Sweden, yeah, they got a monarchy, but Parliament is the one who's doing all the decisions. So even then, it doesn't hold water. So we have to realize that strength is going to be of utmost importance whenever you are having to overcome a massive external load. And if you don't, then strength is great as long as it influences speed and power. Is whenever it quits influencing speed and power, that's when I think we need to step away and look at other methodologies. And now I'm not saying strength in any means, but what I'm talking about is what we're looking at with just squat, bench, and deadlift, these base exercises. I think that after you get strong with those, then and you need more, you got to figure out what you need next. Do you need more force? Okay, well, that means you're still weak, so go ahead and keep it going. Do you need more muscle activation? Right? Are you strong enough? Okay, well, let's build strength unilaterally, because all the proprioceptors and stabilizers have to kick on more. And then that'll allow a greater increase in motor recruitment. And that theoretically should elicit a further adaptation. Okay, and then if you're good on those strengths, well, man, let's improve that velocity into the spectrum. Let's improve reactivity. Doing enough high level pliometric rather than plyometric, really shock method is what Yuri would call it now. Work to upgrade those Titan isomers to be a little bit more elastic, so that we get more snap out of that series elastic component. Or maybe we just need to look at training and dial it in to what is the physiological adaptation that we need to enhance the sport performance, and then implement the training program that influences that, as opposed to just thinking that a rising tide floats all ships with strength. And while it's true for the weak individuals, I don't see it with the strong individuals. Just getting them stronger, it didn't facilitate improvements in speed and jumping ability. Now, if we look at momentum, that the mass times velocity, well, we do see that continues to increase. So with momentum, so with time, as they gain in strength they usually will increase in cross-sectional area as well of the myofiber, and then that's going to cause that increase in mass. Well, for a lineman or a mid position, that's still a good thing, because they need that to be successful. As I illustrated with Jonathan Weekly and Nick Cowley in our JSCR article on, I can't remember the name of it, but it's dealing with momentum and playing time. You'd think I'd remember the name of it. It's the most recent article I published, but dog, I don't remember what I ate for breakfast.
You're busy, dog. Don't worry about it.
I'm scheduling 15-minute blocks. No, I don't care. You really want to know, you can look it up for yourself. But then I also showed that momentum was more sensitive to change with Joe Signorelli and some others, because it includes both the changes in mass and the changes in velocity. So if I'm maintaining speed, right, my 40 time didn't change, but I gained 15 pounds, that's a lot bigger impact.
Yes, sir.
And how do you account for that unless you're accounting for momentum? Because what you're looking at is that, okay, he didn't improve in his speed. Well, yeah, you're right, but his momentum went up.
Yeah.
Theoretically, his force went up, and we know if the force and the velocity went up, that power absolutely went up, just because that's simple physics.
Yeah.
But unless you are measuring for force, it's very, very difficult to derive it, because you can't account for the coefficient of friction on the ground and within the air pressure. And while some might say that's majoring in minor, it's just not valid. And if you wanted to do it, yeah, you could. And dude, I ain't gonna lie, I did that too with a lot of our data, and that's where I found that the force into the spectrum, that force, not force into the spectrum, excuse me, just sprint force was utterly important for the offensive line and the defensive tackles, but not for everybody else.
For sure.
The mids, it was power, right? Well, that's a product of force and velocity. And then the skill, it was just straight up their sprint time.
Straight up velocity,
Yeah. Now, momentum does show some stuff with the skill position, but I think that's more of a factor of height than it is anything else. Because, if you got a 5'8" dude running 4.4 and you got a 6'5" dude running 4.4, the taller dude's better because he's a bigger target and he's more apt to be able to get the thing. But so really the momentum is a function of height rather than thickness there. And so it's kind of even though I love it, it's like, hey, that's one more thing showing I'm right. It's kind of a red herring for the skill. But now how I did that was it was because I had the realization that if we did more with the data we already collect, I think we could find out a lot more. And I was realizing, hey, when we run a 40, what do we have? What score do you get when somebody runs a 40?
Oh, a time.
You get a time. Yeah. And what else do we have from that 40? We got the time, and what else do we have?
Splits.
Well, we have splits, but if we know 40 yards, we know a distance.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I was sitting there, I'm like, I remember the day whenever it happened, I'm like, I am a moron. How long have I been doing this? And force times acceleration. I weighed this dude. I know what his mass is, and I know what his 40 time is. Well, acceleration is distance divided by time squared.
Yeah.
Velocity is just distance divided by time. So I calculated sprint force. I calculated sprint velocity. I calculated by force times velocity gives us power. And that's how I kind of did those things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think I can ever publish it because those numbers are not valid because of the coefficient of friction. So I think that it might be a wealth of stuff for a practitioner, but it would never be able to be researched.
Yeah.
Unless I can find a journal that doesn't care about that. Because, my point was, hey, yo, dude, we ran in an indoor football facility on artificial turf. There is no change in the coefficient of friction. It is a climate controlled environment without an airflow. So that air drag should be eliminated. But whenever you get everybody who's worried about being the most right, not just being, good enough, then those sorts of arguments pop out, and then those things can't progress. And I get it. They're wanting the integrity of the science, the integrity of the data. Cool. I'm a coach first. People like, oh, Dr. Mann. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm a doctor by education, but I'm a coach with a PhD. I'm not your traditional academic. I think that's what endears me to the strength coach, and that's what also has some of the research community chastising me for the way that I do things, and I'm good with it.
So, B, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Sounds like, and again, I'm going to try to simplify it maybe, set principle versus kind of like foundations, like you said. You weren't completely wrong when you were going the strength route. Maybe
I went completely wrong.
Right. There is still a need for a base of strength, right? So it's not like because what I'm curious is, are people going to say, oh, well, then strength isn't necessary?
Yeah, and they start to do that too. And it's
exactly.
Like, man,
that's not where we're going with this.
No, it's like, gee, man, yeah, I almost went on a tirade right there. You got the explicit lyrics. But yeah, man, so like, here's the deal. Here's what I really believe at this point in my career and with everything that I've learned and done is that we say that we learn the basics, but we don't know the basics because we don't go down to that physiological principle to understand what are the adaptations to these types of training, right? So if we're doing that 70 to 85% of 1RM for repetitive effort type stuff, we're increasing the cross-sectional area of the heavy chain myosin, right? And that's going to be related to increases in force, but that's also going to cause an increase in mass. What happens when we live 90% plus? Man, that's Henneman's size principle. So we're trying to get to those high threshold motor units, and hopefully through training, we can, people say selectively recruit to the high threshold motor units. It's not really that. Even the people who came up with the original Henneman's principle, they said, no, it's actually just a reorganization. So you're still going from smallest to largest, but you can just get to the largest one faster, right? So we have that stuff for motor unit recruitment, right?
Yeah.
And then, hey, we got rate coding. So, if you're doing power type training, you're enhancing the nervous system and the speed at which that signal can come down. Right. So, you got to do some sort of ballistics and Olympic lifting variants. Then, we've got looking at the sarcoplasmic reticulum, how it releases and reabsorbs calcium, sucks that. Well, it doesn't reabsorb the calcium. That's the P tubules. And then that calcium stored in the terminal cisternae and stuff. And that's what's actually required for the active binding sites to be open to facilitate the contraction. And if you're talking about sliding or winding filament theory, doesn't matter. That myosin head crossing over is the same regardless of the contraction theory. And then what other things do we have? Well, shoot, man, we got shock method, right? And shock method is like your true depth jumps, the true eccentric distension type work. Well, that strengthens up the actin and the little filament thing, and not a filament, but the little thing that connects the two actins to each other called titin to become a more elastic isomer, a more elastic variation of itself. So then that allows for more free energy return. And then that is helping with cutting for the explosive sports. But on top of that, here's where it gets really interesting. Who it's amazing for is endurance athletes, right?
Yeah.
Because now we're taking it, instead of using the myosin actin cross bridge complex to produce the force, we're using more just stored and released kinetic energy from their foot strides. So their running economy improves. And for a running economy improvement, just in case somebody isn't super familiar with that, how they look at it is they'll put you on a treadmill and have you run a certain pace, and they'll look at how much oxygen it takes for you to maintain that pace. Well, they're decreasing their oxygen utilization because that force is now handled by stored elastic energy. It's free energy instead of the contractile component. Now, if the contractile component is working, it's going to use the mitochondria and oxygen. And if the mitochondria is not working, it's just a rubber band, then there's no increase in oxygen consumption. So we see that that the running economy drastically improves. And that was even with, I would say, substandard plyometric training, in my opinion. To call it plyometric, I think was a overstepping their bounds. I mean, we're talking about some basic like coordination jump type training. It wasn't. Yeah, we're not even getting into any shock method stuff, and we're not even getting into drop jumps. Right? We're not even hitting that hard, and they still saw that improvement in the stored elastic energy. It's like, holy cow, this is like. I'm not going to say it's the golden calf or nothing. But, I think that it is definitely an underutilized area with endurance sports, and that. So what I'm saying is that we need to know the foundations well enough. And that foundation is our physiology, as opposed to just thinking 5x5 is a good way to improve squat. That's not foundation, right? That's application still. So everybody starts at application and thinks that they understand everything moving forward, but then if you would actually stop and think about what is the physiological adaptation that we are trying to induce here, and come at it from that lens, as opposed to, hey, if I do 5 sets of 5 or 4 sets of 8, which one's going to be better? It's the if you've seen Patch Adams, I would sign that when IDGARA. Because he left against medical advice. He left AMA that was going on his file, and he said, "Good, I'm putting IDGRA on mine." Like, what's that? I don't give a rat's ass. So that's what I think that we need to do, and I think that we need to move as a field, especially with how we're moving towards accreditation standards. It's like the education. Hopefully, it's going to be provided by people like me who have had a foot in both worlds. Now, what I fear is that it's going to go all one way or all the other, meaning that, and I've expressed this to Ian Jeffries and Brent Alvar. It's like, hey, maybe we ought to up it to RSCC for requirements of being, professor, because I know what I know. I know what I know now. I know what I knew as a strength and conditioning coach, and I know what I knew going into strength and conditioning from nothing.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of professors are going to misinterpret the applications of some of the research, since they don't have the background of being in that field. Right. So I don't think you can teach something that you've never done, right? To a certain extent, you cannot teach somebody how to master something that which you've not done. Right. I can teach somebody biomechanics, and I'm not a biomechanist, right? I can teach somebody exercise physiology, I think, even though I'm not a physiologist. But how is a carpenter going to teach, or how is somebody going to teach somebody to be a carpenter if they've never cut wood?
Yeah.
I don't, that hopefully the universities take it upon themselves to realize we need to get super qualified individuals for this. And hopefully that, I'm hoping that the other organizations take suit with the accreditation, not lawsuit, but, follow in line. They have these like, okay, you need to have a level of education before you sit down for the exam. Now, I'm also going to say that the exam isn't an end-all be-all, dog. It's not saying that you're an expert because you took this test. It means that you could pass a test. But and some people are like, oh, it's an easy test. It's an easy test. Yeah, well, tell that to the dude that's failed it 6 times. Right. Well, and there's a lot fewer deaths that occur with certified individuals than have occurred without certification. I can think of 1 or 2 that occurred with in rhabdo that occurred. I don't know about rhabdo, but I can only think of 1 death, maybe 2, that occurred with a certified individual out of the hundreds that have happened over my career. I think that it at least proves that there's some amount of baseline knowledge. Now, I'm not saying everybody's got to be the expert of experts, the king of kings, the Alex Trebek trivia style of resistance training. No, and I know that not everybody wants to do that. I do it because I'm obsessive about it. I love it. Yeah. And hopefully that people can learn from me how to do this stuff. Not how to do it, but some of this information, and because they might not get it anywhere else. But I'm just praying that the universities have the foresight to realize that, hey, your dude that did cardiac rehab, he knows how to work old people on a treadmill, and he understands endurance. But is he going to know how to improve the first 5 meters of a 40 as opposed to the last 10? Right. And I don't think he will. Right. Is he going to know what is going to be required of a individual when it's 4th and inches on the goal line and you have to get your nose into that gap, realizing that you are about to get smoked? Yeah. And if they have never done that, I don't think that they're going to be able to prepare the people to prepare the athletes to be able to go do that. And, and that's, it's a criticism, but it's just something that it's like, hey, I'm not saying that this isn't a good idea. I'm not saying that we don't need to go this route. I think that we absolutely do, but we got to make sure who we're putting there in the driver's seat. Yeah. This can't just be a money grab, right? People got to be able to do this because they love it. And maybe it's for some of these older coaches who, you can only be on your feet 16 hours a day for so many years before your body gives out on you. And those coaches, I think it would be good for them to be the professors there. Now, a lot of them aren't getting PhDs. It's getting easier to get a PhD, dog. Yeah. There's several online places. And I'm not saying online is a walk in the park, and I'm not saying that it is easier or harder than getting it at a regular university. I do know that it's more attainable since you don't have to move your life to go do that thing. But I also, realize and respect the fact that some people just don't want to do it. But hey, if we it doesn't take, we don't need 500. Yeah. We need like 30, 40, 50 good ones. If even that. I mean, shoot, I'd be good if every single person came to Texas A&M, to be honest with you. I'd have a job for the rest of my life. You'd be good. I'd be good. There would be plenty of people that would be happy with me here. But I also know that's not realistic. I'm just hoping that there's enough passionate people that can fill these roles and do the things that's necessary to educate this next generation. So B, man, let's talk about the 18-year-old kid. Yeah, that is finishing high school and realizes they love lifting, like you said, like you, man. Like, I love it. Are you still pointing them in the direction of getting that understanding of what's happening at the physiological level, or are you saying maybe the opposite, where I need you to have this experience, you'll get this education later, get your ass in the gym and try everything? Like, what advice are you going to give that 18-year-old on where they need to go next? Well, so CASCI has got which is the accreditation for strength and conditioning through the NSCA. They've got a lot of guidelines on the stuff that the people got to take, right? So, I mean, there's going to be some of that aspect where there's no question. But I think that the person is best to feel it first for themselves. There you go. And Then whenever we can be like, hey, you remember how after we were doing those 6 weeks of drop jumps, that all of a sudden you weren't sticky at the line anymore. You were able to get in and get out on your shuttles. Well, that is this thing that is causing that and facilitating it. Yeah. So whenever we can put the application with the science, that's where the magic happens, man. That's where people, they feel it, they remember it, and they'll never forget it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes me a little bit different than most of the other instructors doing this. And it's because, and I know why it is. It's time, right? I've been a foot in both worlds since I started a faculty job in 2012. Now, I mean, that's just 12 years doing this side of the profession. But guess what? I was doing 14 years on the other side of it before that.
Yeah.
So, I got a little bit of the best of both worlds here.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's changed the way that I view things. So, I'm hoping. So back to it. We're doing both at the same time.
There you go.
We're going to get in the weight room. And my plan is, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there because I believe in sharing secrets. I don't believe that there are secrets. And my plan is that we are eventually going to get program lifts in. And what I mean by that is everybody that's a freshman, everybody that's a sophomore, or maybe it's the whole program altogether. I'm praying it gets big enough to where we got to go by class, right? But get them, and if we can do everybody at once, that's awesome because the seniors are teaching the freshmen, the juniors are teaching the sophomores, and the freshmen and sophomores are asking the questions of the juniors and seniors. And then when they don't know, they'll come ask me. But we'll get in there and we'll break bread not break bread. We'll get in there and lift weights together. We'll bend bars together. We're not breaking bread. We're bending bars, bending bars and setting PRs. But, that's what I'm hoping that we do is like twice a week, we get under the bars together. And then that should drive some of these questions and drive, hey, why is this happening? What's going on here? What's this? What's that? And then fill it in. You can learn in a classroom, but I think it's a lot better to learn by touching it.
Yeah.
And that's tough. And it's going to require people to do stuff, professors to do stuff outside of the classroom. And I get it that I'm not paid for it. But for me, the light coming on, that's what's worth the money.
Yeah.
Whenever I see that light come on for that student, they're like, oh, this is because of this, and this. Oh my God, and them getting excited. Oh my God, though. Every time I see that, if I could still do a cartwheel, I would be doing it in the classroom. Right? I ain't got my own hips, neither one of them are mine anymore. Yeah. So I gotta play it careful, but I definitely get excited and fired up and wound up in the classroom whenever people are getting it. And it just seems to actually encourage learning environment that I don't know if it's that they're trying to seek that same sort of feedback. So they're trying to connect the dots, or if that style just facilitates some of the people connecting the dots. I don't know, but man, it's since I've just pulled the training wheels off and made it okay to get excited and try and create a fun environment, that the engagement's gone up. And I'll tell you, man, there's people in my office all the time. I actually have to get somebody to come sit in my office sometimes so I can get my work done.
So I don't want to say I gotta ask. I'm interested because I don't know if I can't say it started with you, but of course you've been a huge influence on the VBT space. How has it changed in your opinion in terms of adoption, people doing it correctly? What are your thoughts, man, in the last decade since it's probably become a bit more known?
Mainstream dang near now.
Mainstream, yeah.
Some of the things that have changed are that my zones are not good for everyone. And I learned that. I learned that the hard way. They're not for everyone because who was I working with? Very, very homogenous population.
There you go.
Division I football, basketball, and baseball, softball. And there was one other women's sport. I'm trying to remember what it was. It might have been field hockey or something. That, I created the load velocity profiles based upon that. And that's where I got the zones from. And I only did that in the juniors and seniors. That wasn't even the whole team. Because guess what? you got to get strong first. So why are we going to do this stuff on people it ain't germane for?
Right.
And so, but that's one of the things is that I think that the zones have kind of they need to go away for anybody that's not Division I college, football, baseball, track, the speed power sports. One other area that I really commend Fernando Pereira Blanco on for expanding is the area with velocity loss, because with how many different types of devices there are now, they all collect and estimate the data differently.
Yeah.
And that means they're not interchangeable. So, but one thing that is interchangeable is that the same unit's always going to measure the same way.
Right.
So if we look at a decrement of velocity, what we're actually doing is just controlling for fatigue. How much fatigue do we want to induce? And he showed in a 2017 paper that going with fewer repetitions, about half, so we're 20% loss versus a 40% loss, that the 20% loss people saw better improvements in speed and power and strength. Now, the people that went all out, they saw bigger improvements in overall hypertrophy.
Sure.
So, hypertrophy, you got to have mechanical and metabolic damage,
and
training to near failure at 40% velocity loss. Well, that definitely checks both of those boxes.
Yeah.
So, and it was one of those, no kidding. But now what was kind of interesting about that study too, is the 20% loss, they didn't see as great of hypertrophy, but where they saw a slight type 1 shift in the 40% loss, they saw a pretty decent 2A shift in only the 20% loss. So then that kind of goes in to be like, hey, what are you trying to do? Does this person need to get strong and fast? Whatever loads that you like going with, go with them. Let's just give him a 20% loss. If the guy is too skinny, and he needs to put on weight, then let's take him to failure.
Yeah.
Let's just put some mass on him.
Yeah.
And it's not that one's better than the other. They're all, just like anything in training, it's all context dependent. I know several football players that 40% velocity loss was the perfect thing for. And we did something pretty similar to that. And I know plenty of athletes that 40% would be the absolute wrong thing to do. And so, that velocity loss is one area that I really see it going in. And one other area that I'm really trying to promote now that I don't think it's caught on, and I don't know if it ever will, but I really, really, really enjoy combining the Shepherd method of incremental load power profiling with a regular 1RM or heavy day. So where basically you start at the bottom position, like at the bottom of the squat, pause a recount to eliminate stretch shortening cycle activation. And then with a PVC pipe or wooden dowel on your back, you jump as high as you can. Do that 3 reps, take the highest velocity, highest mean velocity. Then you go to a 25% body mass, right? So if you're weighing 180 pounds, that's just using the barbell. You're going to go down. You're going to pause that for a 3 count. You're going to jump up as high as you can, do 3 to 5 reps there. Record all that force, velocity, and power, and go into your squat workout. Go into your squat test, your 1RM. You're achieving the same depth, but now whenever we get up to the 1RM or close to it, we're getting the force into the spectrum.
Yeah.
Hey, man, with that unloaded jump, that's the true velocity into the spectrum. And then we've got the power loads all in between. So now we know where peak power occurred. Now, why that's important is because we know from a lot of work that's been done on optimal load that there's a certain relationship. There should be like a certain percentage that you're hitting peak power at. And if you ain't hitting it, we probably alter you, your training to allow you to adapt to that. It's almost kind of like a dynamic strength deficit, but I like it better because we're using the exercise itself, and I think it's a little bit more sensitive to change, meaning that we could see where the change occurred. Not did power go up, but where did power change to?
Yeah.
Because if power is happening at on a squat 75, 80%, well, that's way too much to the load into the spectrum.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to express that in the field. So we need to do more speed type work.
Yeah.
But if somebody's hitting peak power at unloaded or 10%, and we're talking about whenever we are not including body mass, right?
Yep.
Then they are extremely explosive, but they're probably pretty weak.
Right.
Right. The only caution that I give people there is be wary of that person who's the most explosive person you've ever seen, and they never lifted weights. That dude, don't worry about trying to make them strong. Right. Just keep them going explosive.
Right.
But those are the main areas where I've seen the changes in VBT. And so really the changes that go to velocity loss, making your own zones for your specific population, and then the testing. I think that taking VBT, adding that device on just gives you so much more information with, doing 3 reps of unloaded, 3 reps of a barbell. That takes maybe a minute total, including the changeover. And you get tremendous, and then you just print out the stats, plot it, run your regression from there. It's nails, dude.
Yeah.
You get so much more information out of it with minimal input. It doesn't make sense to do it otherwise, to me, at least not now.
Is there, I know we said the device now is like, if you just stick to the one, you probably get the information that you're looking for, but is there still a device where you're like, I'm still pointing people in this direction? Or is it, no, the theory will work?
I always tell people to do their own research and looking for validity and reliability studies. There are some units that are out there. I'm not going to name names.
Right. I don't want you to.
Yeah, and they could look up the paper that I did with Sergio. What is Sergio's last name? Yamas Orellano or something like that. He's Chilean. And Francesco Travasio. We did a paper on the error rates of different units on Olympic weightlifting movements. So the device that I feel comfortable always pushing everybody to, that it will have the greatest accuracy of anything commercially available, is still GymAware. It is hands down the best. There's no question about it. I have no financial relationship with them. I get no money for saying this. They just happen to be, the best device that's out there. There are other devices that are pretty good, right? And there are devices out there that you would have better luck with a midway game being accurate at the fair than having that device be accurate within a workout. So, it runs the gamut. So you've got to, you got to do your research. I keep threatening to make a company, do a little side hustle that would be like consulting with people that, hey, what are you trying to do? And let's point you in the direction of the right device. Yeah. If you want to have a lab in your back pocket, go GymAware. If you want to have the ability to just give some feedback and you don't even really need the accuracy, go with one of these cheaper units. If you need somewhere in between, go with this unit. If you need something that's camera based, well, here's these 2 different units. Here's the difference between them. You pick which one that you would work best for your situation. Maybe it's an app for some people. Maybe it's a jump mat for some people. Who knows? But I've thought about trying to put together a little consulting company for that. I don't know how well it would hit off because there's only so many schools. But maybe people would want to, do that, buy nice or buy twice, or at least, have the advice of somebody who's had their hands on most. I haven't had my hands on everything, but I've had my hands on a lot, and some of them have been amazing, and some of them have been. I'd rather. If I run out of toilet paper, I might use that device. So I've seen the full gamut.
And let me ask you this now. And if you don't want to continue down this road, we don't have to be understanding.
Yeah.
But the devices, is there value in feedback? So
there's always value in feedback, but the feedback has to be accurate enough, because what's going to happen is with some of these devices, that were worse than midweight gains. The athlete knows good and damn well that they stood up as fast as they possibly could, and it said it was slower than the previous repetition where they were going half-ass on it.
Right.
Well, you are going to lose credibility by using one of those devices.
Right.
Now, just the driving of intent, I think there's a value there, but it has to at least be reliable. I don't even care if it's valid.
Right.
Just as long as it's reliable. And it's like, what do you mean by that? It's like, well, dude, if my I call it bathroom scale theory, right? My bathroom scale isn't a valid measuring device. It's always way different than all the other measuring devices. But my bathroom scale is reliable because if I stand on there 10 times in a row within about 0.2 pounds, it'll tell me that the same weight. So I know if I've gained or lost weight because it's reliable. But I don't know exactly what my weight is because it's not a valid measurement. Everything is always as good as the programmer, right? So, you've got a device and the device is great, but it's the software that makes that device run that is it actually going to work out or not? And some of the devices are even in the same category. Right. So even accelerometers, there's some that are what I would consider usable. And I'm not an accelerometer guy because I would rather measure something directly than measure a different metric and try and estimate something else.
Right.
Right. Because, whenever you get down to it, accelerometers measure acceleration. So if I'm moving at a constant velocity because it's a heavy weight, that's a constant velocity. There's no acceleration. So he doesn't know how to measure it. And what about whenever I'm using lightweights and trying to push them fast? I'm only spending 35%, 40% of that movement in acceleration. The rest of it, I'm decelerating. So then it's not able to do its right job and get the velocity on there. So, but some devices do better than others, right? There's some devices out there that are, like I said, if I run out of toilet paper, I want to use it. But there's obviously some devices that are amazing, and they've got the potential for you to, really do like research grade type stuff with a commercial device.
Dude, what really excites you when you wake up in the morning now? Like, what is like on the edge? Like, man, this has got me going.
Well, man, some of it it's my kids, like getting up and doing the stuff with them whenever I get to dude, I'm excited to take them to the tailgate on Saturday. But in terms of work, right now it's pouring into the students. And man, we got some great first year PhD students here that it's not that the other ones aren't great too. It's just that this is my second year here. I'm starting to integrate with them more because, I'm going to be on their committees and things like that. Man, we got this kid that's a swimmer from Penn State. And he obviously, I was going to get him going on some swimming stuff that I've wanted to do for a while, but that takes time. And I had some archival data from the NFL Combine that I wanted to do something with. And this dude, it's, he's going out and he's learning how to do all these different aspects of it, and statistics and finding these different models and things like that. He's texted me twice. He's like, hey, when's your door going to open? I need to talk to you. It's firing me up. And then, we've got some stuff that we're doing with the Department of Defense here through DARPA that I'm not directly involved with. I'm tangentially involved with. I'm not the PI by any means. That's Dr. Steve Riekman. But looking at, how do we change fatigue? How do we, and something that, just clicked with me yesterday is that they were trying to measure fatigue, but the measures that they were looking at were actually readiness. And it's like, hey, we got to realize this. So sometimes I think what really is exciting me, you know what, whenever we get down to it, what is really getting me excited and going is getting these little physiological adaptations and trying to pinpoint those and knowing what the training does for that and put it into different populations. The thing that I'm going to be doing next, dog, is once I get accreditation done for this master's and bachelor's program, and this was way more work than I ever thought it would be. And we talked about that side hustle. I want to get going, but one of
Yeah.
the things that I really want to put up is I'm giving a talk tomorrow on this. It's flipping the script on human performance training, taking the stuff that work with athletes and applying it to general population.
Let's
So we
go.
applied VBT to aging and Parkinson's and found tremendous results in terms of improving gait speed and stuff like that. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is start with plyometrics on the aging train. And I want to do true shock train, get them up to true shock training, but scale, right? Because an 80-year-old person, they can't even jump, right? So are we going to get these people doing drop jumps? Are we going to be doing box jumps and hurdle hops with these people? No, we're going to scale it with a sledge device to remove gravity's resistance to be able to do those sorts of things. So then, one, we're getting an enhanced rate coding, but also, man, if you ever notice the strength numbers and the coordination type stuff never really goes away for aging, right? What goes away is somebody's bounce. Watch them walk. Watch an old person walk up the stairs. Watch a young person walk up the stairs. Even an older fit person.
Yeah.
They go slow.
Yeah.
They've lost that bounce.
Yeah.
Now, where's that bounce come from? It comes from the connective tissues, and it comes from the isomers of titin. And how do we train that connective tissue and those isomers of titin? With plyometrics. So we are sitting here throwing strength at something, expecting it to change. We're increasing the cross-sectional area of that myofiber, right? And we're expecting to see an adaptation of better use of stored elastic energy. It, to me, is like crapping in one hand and wishing in the other.
Yeah.
We're going to see which one fills up first. And it's like, well, this isn't causing the appropriate change and that we would expect to see in gait.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
it's because you're not. It's said principle, not. Wait, what would that be? GAID principle or something? General adaptation of those demands.
Right.
That
yeah.
don't exist, man. Right. I just made that up, so I don't know if that's actually a thing or not.
Patented, dude.
But patented.
Copyrighted.
It's over. Yeah. That's copyright. Trademark right here.
Trademark it, dude.
Trademark on GAID. But yeah, so that's what really gets me up and going, and it's seeing the lights turn on for these students too. Whenever they start looking at it in that manner, and it's just like, holy cow! Now everything falls into place. Here's how this stuff that we learned in physiology, we learned this stuff over here for the resistance training and sports performance. Now we're bridging that gap between the two, and I love it,
brother. So you hit something that's near and dear to me right now because, and I've said it on two separate talks, and I'm going to say it on this one again. I strongly believe, and I'm trying to be careful. Our industry, professionals, and I'm going to look at you as well. I know that we serve the overserved, but there's so much wealth of knowledge that we have that can benefit the quote unquote underserved aging population that you just spoke to, where I'm just waiting for this shift to happen where aging populations sick. One of the big ones for me right now has been the rise in cancer diagnoses that are happening and what our profession can do for helping people that are going through it, but they just don't get access to the information and they just don't know, man. And so providing that for the underserved population is something big. So hearing you say that, man, it just made me go, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because we could talk about helping football players get better at the combine all day long. But like you said, for a person that's got Parkinson's, that trains the correct way and either doesn't fall, like that, to me is where we're really starting to make impact.
Yeah. I want to, while the Caskey is saying strength and conditioning has to be in the title or something else, I'm resisting that right now because I think that's wrong. I think that we got to look at it in terms of human performance because there's only so many sport teams. But you know what? There's a lot of old people. There's a lot of sick people. And there's a lot of people that if we would just apply the paradigms that we learned from athletics, the training styles that we learned from athletics, and apply them to these general populations, works like a hot knife through cold rolled butter, man. And that's what I'm really trying. I'm hoping. I love it because I got a bunch of kids that are going to physical therapy that are taking some of my classes. And I love it because now if I can influence them at this point in time and they can understand how these things work together,
Mm-hmm.
it's hands
Now
down,
we're
man.
doing. Yeah, now
Yeah,
we're
dude,
doing.
it's gonna be, it's gonna be like a bunch of Andrew Pauls running around,
Ooh.
as the next profession, the next generation. And I love the dude. He was one of my athletes and one of my colleagues, and even
Mm-hmm.
one of my students. And whenever you get down to it, so that's what I'm hoping. I hope that my goal has been, as a poor white kid coming up from nothing, a poor white boy from backwoods Oklahoma, single parent family, had a lot of stuff going on. My goal is to leave a mark that lasts beyond me. That I want to try, and I'm not doing stuff. Yeah, do I get personal satisfaction out of this? Yes, by helping people. But I hope that the stuff that I have done lasts beyond my lifetime. That's what I'm hoping, uh, that from my point on, there's going to be more people standing in the middle in this translational space that's going to allow the bench scientists and the practitioners to be able to communicate well and to do this. And that's what I hope I leave my legacy as, is that, hey, we got to dig deeper. We got to find we got to have that science merge with practice and make sure that the practice follows the science and the science follows the practice. Because if you're a scientist and you don't understand the practice, you're going to do a disservice to the field. Because I have seen a ton of really, while they are very well done scientifically, they are very poorly done practically in terms of the study. So hopefully I can, there's people telling me they're watching and they're trying to do the same thing. And I'm hoping this movement lasts, dog. I really do. That we gotta set things up. That old saying, and I've been quoting so many quotes today. Societies grow great when old men plant trees that they will never feel the shade of. And I'm hoping that I can get some other people playing Johnny Appleseed with me, and that we can really facilitate a change in this profession instead of just regurgitating the same stuff that we've been talking about since 1955, 1965. Some of these new ideas, they ain't new, man.
They
They're
ain't
50
new.
years old. They're 60 years old. You
Yeah.
want a new idea, read an old book, and it makes me sick, dude, that everybody thinks that they've got some sort of secret and that it is what's going to change the world, and they're going to keep it to themselves so that they can be the whatever. That ain't a secret, man. Somebody else has already done it. Somebody else has already thought of it. Let's get together. Let's get at the right table. Let's work together to push this thing forward. Because, honestly, I think we've been spinning our wheels for a while. And I want to see that push forward. So I put my money where my mouth is, and I'm at the back of that truck, and I'm pushing for all I'm worth right now. Will that truck go anywhere? I don't know. But I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep, swinging. I'm going to build that ship. I'm going to swing my hammer until I am called home. And that's just me. That's what I'm going to do. And hopefully I get some other people that are swinging with me, that are pushing that truck, swinging that hammer, trying to build stuff. And hopefully we can right the ship. We can improve the industry. As I say, I love the field. I hate the profession. Well, I want to be able to love both.
Yep.
And that's and without work, it ain't gonna happen.
So, all right, man. To kind of wrap this up, I'm gonna ask, and again, it is my one canned question in these talks. It's the one that I came into this with you and I just rapping, but I always have one canned question. I'm asking you, B-Man. It does not have to be a book. It can be person. It could be podcast. It could be I don't care what it is. If I just said, "Hey, B, 3 resources, 3 things where you'd say, hey, check this out, listen to this person, read this, watch this, listen, whatever." And it doesn't have to be about our profession. It could be something that you just like, man, I listened to this song the other day. What are you going to tell me 3 things where like you want to share with me?
Man, 3 things. I'm glad you didn't tell me this ahead of time, because this is going to be more. And if you did tell me, it's okay, because I didn't look. As far as resources, man, I think one of the top ones has got to be Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Beautiful.
Anytime that I notice I'm getting out of balance, if I actually go back and reread that book, it helps me to, remember what is supposed to be important and how to proceed. So I think that one is invaluable. It's lasted the decades.
Mm.
A song that's really speaking to me right now is "I'm Still Fine" by the Red Clay Strays.
Mm.
And that song, and it to me, it's also another one that's right there with it, is "Stand Up to the Man" by Jason Boland. But this one's a lot more recent than people would know, and it's really about like, hey man, I'm doing everything, even though it hurts, I'm still pushing forward. I'm keep grinding, and no matter what, I'm still here. I might disagree with people, but I'm still fine. And and that "Stand Up to the Man," it was with Jason Boland. It was just reminded me that it's. I hear people talking about the lines that I've been walking. Say they won't lead to the valley of the wise. There's the ones that say they love you and try to stand above you, and they'll beat your back and make you tell a lie. And then, gosh, I can't remember the next line, but it just coming up to that basically you have no choice but to push forward. It is not for you to decide. You're on this trail and you're on this path and you want to be successful. You've got to stand up to that man that's coming down at you, because you don't have a choice. Your back's against the wall. You got to go. And then the last one, John Welborn posted this the other day, and these are shoot, which one do I want to go? Hold up. Man. So there's a movie called Peaceful Warrior, right? And I don't know where you can find it anymore. But if you want to understand sports psychology, in a way that takes away the psychobabble, it's a great movie to understand how to be right here, right now, in this moment, and the importance of it, and to be able to put everything else aside. I think that's a great one. And then I'm going to just add in this. I guess technically it's a fifth one.
Go for
it. Yeah, man. Everybody hears that Voltaire. Common sense is not so common, but he had another one. Life is a shipwreck, but we must learn to sing in the lifeboat. And some of the stuff that I've had going on lately, personally and professionally, that hearing that quote, that sometimes you hear something and you will know the place that you were at and where you heard this at for the rest of your life. Because I felt jolted whenever I read that. John Welborn posted it on Instagram. And I think I responded to him. I'm like, I don't know if you need to put this on a t-shirt and I buy it, or I have found another tattoo.
You're right.
But if nothing else, I'm going to get a sign, and a sign of that, and put it up in my office. Because my Lord, there are going to be so many things that you face in your life that are going to feel defeating, that are the silence occurring from it is deafening, that the tides against you seem insurmountable, and you know that success is not an option. But we're going to go down singing and have it as much fun as we can with it, because this is our only life. And by God, we got to enjoy everything that we can. And so that's probably like Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy or something. But most people aren't going to get that, because I'm getting old. To see all this gray hair in my beard, I'm like, damn, I need to figure out this Just for Men. Dennis, I don't know what your secret is, brother, but I need to know it. And I
cut it short.
That's it.
That's what it is. I cut it short. My wife cuts my beard, and it was long, B, and it was gray. And she was like, "You want to trim?" And I was like, "Don't cut my beard." And she went, "Zoop." And she cut it. Cut it down, dog.
My wife wants to do it. I'm like, man, no, I can't grow hair on my head too well anymore, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's going illustriously off my chin. So I probably just got to dye that. Go do that. What Joe Ken, House calls gray out. I need to get that gray out and take care of that. But yeah,
brother, thank you so much for your time. I know that it is called for a lot. I know you're serving a lot, and so for you to take as much time as you did, I can't thank you enough, man. I appreciate you.
Anything for an old friend, my man. Anything for an old friend,
my dude.